A man in front of the cage of an enormous beast, which is the crown prince rejected by the emperor at birth for being a monster. In the Golden Age, in Mundus, humans and other species lived in peace until humans exiled them. And they declared war. The surviving creatures lived hidden and avoiding humans, and the captured ones were turned into guinea pigs. Monsters are born as beasts, but some with powerful magic can transform into humans. It is believed that the ruling Leopold family has divine blood, but their strength comes from being relatives of monsters, not from a god. The beast roars loudly, and the man asks the girl to put it to sleep, as its power is what brought the heroine here. The owner of the body she reincarnated into is Floria Vernon, with the blood of flower people who control floral aromas. The man asks her to calm the beast until he arrives. Only then will he be able to examine it comfortably. Floria promises that the scent will penetrate as deeply as possible. Her father congratulates her for being so useful and strokes her head. After instructing Floria to work diligently, the man leaves the cave. The protagonist stares intently at the beast, as the day has finally come to meet the male protagonist who will tear her apart. Actually, she was reading the novel Surrender to the Flower and fell asleep. Then reincarnating into the body of the villain, Duke Bernon's daughter, aware that there is no way to return to reality from the book. The protagonist earned recognition and entered the Duke's inner circle. And of course, Floria awaits the fate of dying first at the hands of the male protagonist, who could not stand the Duke's experiments. Her kind and open brother Arden is the only warm person in the ruthless Vernon Duke family. He approached his sister and asked if she was okay, as she had suddenly become strangely paralyzed. However, the young woman simply got nervous upon learning of the arrival of such an unusual creature. Floria was just about to take a look at the large black panther, since her father had already left. Arden wished his sister good luck and advised her to be cautious. And she asked him not to worry. She wouldn't want a man like her brother to die. But her family's fate is sealed in the original story. Floria enters the dungeon, touching a special crystal that only opens for the chosen ones. Mystery envelops her. She decided a long time ago to change the course of the original novel for the good people, even if she must risk her life. Descending into the dungeon, Floria notices a wound on the beast's shoulder. Something has damaged its skin. Staring intently at her with its yellow eyes, the panther growls at her, and the heroine screams in pure terror. The tension is palpable. Then, taking out a small vial, she promises to alleviate its pain. Will it be enough? Floria asks if his name is Cartel, and the beast asks with astonishment, "How do you know his name?" Despite being a flower human and a half-breed, the monster knows that reading souls is beyond its reach. Or not. It seems to the heroine that, on the contrary, it went very well, and perhaps they can even reach an agreement. According to her, flower humans have the ability to see the one truth once in their lives. And she used it on Cartel. Shocking. Actually, Floria lied about using that ability. That floral blessing tests commitment and reads the truth in the soul. Knowing that Cartel can transform, the heroine seeks a deal, promising to find a way to break his seal. But when he escapes, he must allow her and the others to leave this place. If Floria wants that pact, they must trust each other. And Cartel demands she enter his cage. The heroine yields, the beast will take her mana and become human for an instant. In the original novel, the seal breaks upon fleeing. She must remove it while conscious. The girl approaches, and he asks her to pour her mana into the seal. It is very hard for Floria. Her magic drains at a brutal speed. Cartel begs her to open her eyes, and looking at him, she sees a boy in front of her. The girl feels curiosity to see the book's hero. Hair black as night. Eyes of a wild beast. Cartel doesn't understand why Floria is so scared. If in human form, he is less dangerous. Hugging Floria, Cartel affirms that he has no intention of killing her. For now, and although the heroine trembles, she insists she is not afraid. Is that true? The medallion on the girl's neck suddenly begins to glow. Her father calls her. It's time to go. She was in the dungeon longer than expected. And now she doesn't know if she can make it in time. Finally, the heroine promises Cartel she will return. And then they will make a deal. Back at the mansion, Floria runs up the stairs so as not to be late for the meeting with her father. But there she runs into the most annoying guy in the family. Do you want to know where the half-breed is running to? Rackus Vernon, the Duke's second son and the only son born to the Duchess, is her direct heir. Unlike the original Floria, the heroine doesn't hold a grudge against him, but he certainly annoys her quite a bit. Just now, upon hearing that the Duke is waiting for her, because she is more useful to her father than Rackus, he starts yelling at her. The boy raises his hand against his stepsister, but thanks to the aroma of the numbness flower, she paralyses him instantly. Rackus's hand trembles from the tension and the desire to hit Floria, but his body does not obey him at all. The young woman sees no point in talking to a fool, so she suggests to his hand not to talk to her in vain. She leaves, leaving Rackus, whom she considers pathetic, standing there completely motionless. Floria enters the room where the Duke is waiting, who immediately notices she is a bit late. The young woman explains to her father that she ran into Rackus on the way, whom even he considers useless. The heroine recounts how she relieved the beast's pain, who seemed quite agitated. The father instructs Floria to observe him closely, because he himself won't be able to go down to see him this week. According to him, he only trusts his daughter, and that is why he entrusts this matter precisely to her. The protagonist is not used to the Duke's gaze, as if he were examining her. She didn't notice she was being watched, and doesn't understand how he found out everything. In any case, the heroine urgently needs to gather more information. Wherever she goes, the truth is hidden, and she always hesitates due to the guilt she feels. Upon reaching the door, Floria knocks softly, and a voice from inside tells her to come in. In bed, smiling, sits the Duke's legitimate wife, Lady Ellen Vernon. She took the half-breeds into her warm and soft arms, as if they were her children. The woman helped the Duke, a prisoner of the monsters, escape, but the next day she went mad. Although they said it was due to an incident, the heroine knew her father's guilt. Promising to return soon, Floria runs out of the room. The young woman hopes to protect herself and her loved ones from the Duke. She tries to calm the tremor in her hands and repeats to herself that she will surely succeed. The next morning, Floria goes back down to the dungeon where the beast is. Staring intently into Cartel's eyes, the heroine demands that he promise not to behave as he did yesterday. It seems shameless to the young woman that he pretends not to have done anything yesterday, but she enters his cage anyway. Floria touches the seal on his shackles, and the panther regains its human form once more. She throws a cloak at Cartel and, turning around, asks him to get dressed. However, he had never worn clothes before, as he had always lived like an animal and had no need to dress. Floria agrees to help him dress, if in return Cartel stays still. The young woman finds it hard to control her gaze, but tries not to look at his naked body. Cartel notices it, and again, doesn't miss the opportunity to mock the heroine. Once dressed, he thinks it's not bad, but prefers to be naked, so he rips the sleeves of the robe. With a deep sigh, Floria proposes to Cartel that they discuss the contract. Gathering her courage, she proposes marriage to the beast. Of course, she might seem crazy to him, but the girl has no other option. According to her, the Duke will continue his experiments, and one day Cartel's mind will suffer. The heroine doesn't say it, but she knows that, in a year, the beast will break free and destroy the entire Vernon family. Cartel doesn't understand anything, and, ironically, points out the girl's strange tastes. But she replies that she is not doing it for pleasure. To stop the experiments, they need a reason. If they get married, the Duke, with eyes bloodshot from collecting rare beings, will accept the enchanted marriage. This way they will buy time to escape, and using that pretext, the experiments will stop. Is that why she used the floral blessing on him? Cartel wonders. If normally the blessing is used on the couple, Floria is surprised that Cartel knows this. If she never told him those details. But it was a lie. The heroine is a half-breed and did not receive the goddess's blessing, so she does not have that ability. And now that he believed her, the heroine feels guilty when she asks with what intention she used the blessing. But she cannot tell the truth. So she replies that the situation was critical, nothing more. To the heroine's surprise, Cartel easily believes her and does not insist, but he wants something in return. Floria wonders what he will want. This cannot be a no-loss transaction for him. Approaching the girl and touching her face with his long fingers, he demands that she not try to deceive him. Cartel wants Floria to answer him kindly. Her skin burns upon contact, but a chill runs down her neck as his hands assess her like a freshly caught prey. His animal eyes seem to scream that Floria is the one trapped, not him. But she started it all, so the control is hers. At least until the main heroine appears. Taking Cartel by the chain, she pulls him closer and demands an answer, just as kindly. He pushes her hand away, wraps an arm around her waist, looks her in the eyes, and declares that the contract is sealed. Raku's laments, apologizing for the broken vase while his father yells at him furiously. According to the Duke, not even selling 30 idiots like his son would cover the losses. Raku's insists that he only wanted to help, and it wasn't on purpose. Arden is terrified to see his father gripping his sword. If things continue like this, a tragedy could occur. Floria steps between the Duke and Rakas, excusing herself by saying she was afraid her father would waste his energy. According to her, Rakas is restless because of his older brother's absence. And things get worse because he doesn't respond for anything. The protagonist suggests assigning him the task of taking care of the sewer, where the waste from the chimeras in the experimental tower ends up. Although it is the dirtiest place, since the experiments are top secret, their management must be especially strict. With a smile, Floria asks Rakas if he also wants to do something truly productive. The boy is willing to work diligently if the Duke assigns him the job. And the heroine is happy with how well everything turned out. The girl didn't plan to talk about this now, but since she started, she must play her part perfectly. With flushed cheeks, trembling eyelashes, and hands clasped as if embarrassed, she declares her intention to marry. Absolute silence descends upon the room, and everyone present looks at Floria in astonishment. After recovering somewhat from the shock, Arden asks who she intends to marry. Blinking innocently, the protagonist says she wants to marry the monster locked in her cave. Just as she expected, the Duke stands up, genuinely shocked by the news. According to Floria, she wants to be useful to her father, since controlling the monster with the flower is not a legend. But the truth? The young woman declares with conviction that she will be able to tame that beast. The Duke admits the legend exists, but insists there is no need to talk about marriage. Nevertheless, Floria believes that this way her family can catch the imperial family by surprise. Cartel is a secret of the imperial family Leopold, hidden from the world under lock and key. Floria resolves to help him regain his human form, as monsters could transform in the past. Cartel was born in animal form and was locked up, but pure Leopold blood runs in his veins. If he can become human again, this could completely change the balance of power in the Empire. Faced with the Duke's doubt about whether Floria can truly achieve it, the young woman smiles smugly. The Leopold Empire is divided into two factions, the sacred one, representing the majority, and the demonic one, the minority. The main forces of the nobility believe that the imperial family possesses sacred divine power, so they trust them unconditionally. Unlike them, those who study the demonic cult came from abroad. Their history is very short, and their attempts to create something new are forbidden and considered treason. But the rejection of elements from different cultures halts development, and this threatened the Leopold Empire. In the end, the Empire took advantage of demonic teaching and called the magic stones necessary for it. The gift of the gods. Floria promises the Duke to bring him the heads of the imperial family members with the help of this marriage. It is said that the crown prince, born to the empress, was too weak and died. Then evidence emerged that the empress drank abortifacient potions and was executed. But this was just a ploy. In this way, the imperial family erased the prince, born in the body of a beast, from this world. who is actually alive. The Duke asks why his daughter did not come to him immediately with such a commendable idea. Noticing a hint of pessimism in his tone, Floria explains that she does not wish to marry a common man. She longs to live helping her father, but marriage would force her to leave. Something she would hate. Continuing her act, the young woman begs the Duke to use her for something great. Suddenly, all three children stare astonished at their father, who bursts into loud laughter. According to Vernon, he knew of Floria's talent, but he never imagined she would go to such lengths. Patting her on the shoulder, he grants her permission to act according to her desires. He proposes granting the monster the status of royalty of inertia to announce the wedding before he transforms. The protagonist is seduced by the idea of masking everything with a marriage of convenience between continents. Upon leaving the room, the Duke promises to send news of the marriage to the imperial palace shortly. But suddenly, Arden, usually so quiet and serene, stops him dead. Even if none of this is real, he doesn't understand how there can be a wedding with a beast. Despite the decision already made by his father, Arden tries to object, which terrifies the protagonist. The boy grabs the medallion on his neck, while a ring shines brightly on the Duke's finger. This ring is connected to the pendants on the necks of Floria, her two older brothers, and the youngest one. The Duke uses them to send signals to his children when he wants to call them, and at the same time inflicts pain to dominate them. Precisely, these pendants are the reason why they cannot escape, since, besides not being able to take them off, they reveal their location. Since childhood, the Duke has been subjugating his own children through pain. And even the kind Arden, since then, complies with everything without a single word of disobedience. Upon leaving the room, the Duke talks to his daughter about his faith in her abilities. Without looking at him, the girl promises her father that she will definitely handle everything. The heroine trembles at the thought of how monstrous the Duke is. Having obtained her father's permission, she could go more freely to the underground cave. And Cartel's investigation stopped. In a few days, the news of Floria's marriage spread throughout the country. Cartel never imagined she would achieve all this. But according to the girl, she always keeps her word. After that day, many things appeared in the cave. From a bed to a table, a chair, and other luxury furniture. The first stage of deceiving her father was a success, although because of it, Floria distanced herself from Arden. Her brother confessed that he could not accept that news in any way. It was the first time he showed himself to be so stubborn and different. But the heroine couldn't tell him her plan. Collapsing on the bed in the cave, she doesn't know what to do now after everything she has messed up. Floria demands that Cartel obey her in front of the others, because if someone from the family discovers them, there could be trouble. The panther shakes its ears and moves away, and the girl feels like the monster isn't listening to her. But Cartel looks towards the back of the cave and warns that someone is approaching from there. Floria knows her father wasn't planning to come down here for days, and suddenly she sees her older brother. Rikil. He has silver hair, lined blue eyes, broad shoulders that reveal an authentic warrior. The heroine is surprised by his return from the capital and doesn't understand why Rikil came to the cave without changing. Floria runs towards him, regretting not having waited for him, as she didn't believe he would return so soon. In the novel, there was no detailed description of the character, only that he always obeyed the father's orders. Although they grew up together, Floria cannot understand what goes on in her brother's head. He probably came to see the monster out of simple curiosity. Approaching the cage, Rikil asks if his sister really plans to marry that monster. Without understanding how he knew about the wedding so quickly, Floria replies that he is not a monster, but the Leopold crown prince. However, look at him however you want, Rikil only sees a beast, and moreover, an enormous one. The protagonist shivers upon hearing Cartel's voice behind her, who tells her that the little bird has lost all fear. However, realizing that Rikil cannot hear his voice at all, the young woman breathes a sigh of relief. Still, she is uncomfortable with how Cartel refers to her brother, and she throws an angry look at the monster. Rikil is half human, half bird, and furthermore, the rare blood of a noble silver falcon runs in his veins. Floria doesn't know how Cartel knew her brother was related to birds. But she thinks calling him a sparrow is incorrect. Rickel asks his sister if she is really going to join that monster. According to the protagonist, she will if he transforms into a human. Determined to take care of Cartel before he transforms into a human, Rickel grips his sword. He would love for the monster to die instantly, but Vernon senses that he will cling to life. Seeing Rickel's determined eyes, the protagonist doesn't understand how he could kill someone from her father's collection and defy his will. The monster also glares, and Floria wonders which of the two it is better to stop. Combining both names, Cartel and Rickel, the girl demands that Cariel stop. Right now. Following the girl's words, silence descends upon the cave, and the three stare intently. The brother is surprised that Floria has already given that monster a name, but insists that she cannot simply call him a beast. Cartel doesn't understand what kind of name that is, more suited for a kitten. But the protagonist could not reveal his true name to Rickel. Pushing her brother towards the cave exit, Floria suggests they go upstairs as soon as possible. Upon exiting, a falcon perches on Rickel's hand. What a moment! The protagonist pets the bird's head, as she hadn't seen Pi for a long time. Arden must have told my brother everything. Rumors wouldn't spread like this through the capital. Rickel sighs, wondering once again how his sister can be with that beast. After saying goodbye, she only replies that she will hide her intention to harm the monster from her father. It seems to the protagonist that Rickel looks like he is enduring something terrible. That same night, Floria sits in front of her vanity and Cheryl helps her get ready. The young woman asks the maid to comb her hair to one side. Looking in the mirror, she thinks she undoubtedly deserves to be called the Scarlet Rose of the Vernons. Everyone is gathered at the table, and Floria goes down for the family dinner. She apologizes for being late due to the long preparations. It had been a while since there had been formal dinners in the castle. The protagonist looks at Arden, who is obviously still offended by her decision to marry the beast. The Duke announces the start of the banquet for Rickel's imminent return from the capital. Vernon asks him how everything is going, and Rickel replies that he saw how he was adapting and returned immediately. The protagonist understands exactly what they are talking about between themselves. They had to hand over a unicorn to the imperial family to acquire Cartel. Although it looks like the legends describe, it is actually a horse chimera to which her father attached wings. And a horn. Since many monsters were used to create the unicorn, the Duke cannot allow it to die. According to Rickel, they will show it to the public on Divine Day. Apparently, they want to show the unicorn to the citizens, passing it off as a divine gift, to proclaim a solid imperial right. The protagonist even finds it amusing how similar the Vernon and Leopold families seem. And although the Duke praises Rickel for the excellent work done, he sees nothing extraordinary in it. From the day after tomorrow and for a week, the Duke will be absent. He will attend the usual meeting of the adherents to the demonic doctrine. The father will assign a butler to Rickel so that, in his absence, his son will manage all matters. The announcement of Floria's wedding will be made after the meeting ends. When the young woman's marriage is officially announced, she will have fewer worries. That's why she tells her father, smiling, that she is very happy. The protagonist understands Arden's state, but she doesn't understand what is wrong with Rickel, who is also sitting, head bowed. According to the Duke, after the announcement, he will help with the entire process. So the sooner the monster becomes human, the better. The father leaves the dining room first, and the three children stand up to see him off. The protagonist is tired, and therefore also asks her brothers for permission to retire. However, Rickel stops her and asks her to follow him. The young woman looks at Arden, who has moved away from her, not understanding what business her older brother might have with her. She believes this might be related to what happened in the cave that day. When Floria enters Rickel's office, he hands her a letter and tells her there is a place she must visit. It is said that a lady from the Edbell family acquired a rare creature, and the girl must find out which one it is. In high society, these creatures are kept as pets, but if Vernon took an interest, it is something special. The protagonist finds it strange that Rickel called her so late to talk about a tea ceremony that will take place in 3 days. Among the adherents of the demonic doctrine, the Vernon family was the only one with the title of Duke. Most adherents of the divine doctrine in the nobility scorned and expelled the adherents of the demonic doctrine. But it was impossible to do so with the Vernon family, which manufactured combat weapons for the imperial court. Thus, Floria seemed on the one hand a heretic, and at the same time a flower that could not be plucked. Young men, regardless of which doctrine they belonged to, courted her incessantly. The lady, with almost inhuman beauty, provoked envy, always making Floria uncomfortable. Sienna Edbell is the main instigator of the group against the protagonist. She hates that someone else receives attention and always tries to humiliate Floria in society. Sienna hired someone to spill wine on her, spread rumors of witchcraft, and more. None of this harmed the protagonist. But now Edbell has a rare being and invited Floria for tea. The girl wonders how special that creature must be for her to burn with desire to show it off. The heroine is worried that something might happen at the event, as right now she is completely blind. Cartel suggests to Floria that she sleep like that, and upon opening her eyes, she sees the beast sitting in front of her. She doesn't like leaving him alone, even for a short time, after learning that Rickel wants to kill the monster. She had calmed down upon learning of her father's departure, but now she worries about her brother and his intentions. The girl informs Cartel that she will not go to the cave tomorrow and asks him to simply wait for her patiently. Touching his restraints, Floria notices cracks, which obviously formed due to her magic. Cartel, like a big cat, seeks contact, and the heroine is about to give him power to transform into a human. With his usual cunning smile, the beast asks if it is too early for the wedding night. The heroine is indignant, asking why he remembered Rickel's words about her plan to merge with him. And now he reminds her of it. However, when Floria tries to transmit magic to him, for some reason she fails. The girl, discouraged, sits on the bed, because a few days ago Cartel absorbed her power and became human. For an instant, she even feels like he is restraining himself on purpose. But the beast wants to get out of this body more than anything in the world. Suddenly, Floria's eyes begin to close due to a sudden fatigue, and she collapses onto Cartel's soft fur. The beast is surprised by the girl's lack of vigilance, as she not only entered the cage, but also fell asleep. Suddenly turned human, Cartel thinks about how easy it would be to tear her throat out. Carefully, he lays Floria, deeply asleep from exhaustion, onto the bed. However, Cartel is not bored at all. On the contrary, all of this is fascinating to him. When they met in the Imperial dungeon, the beast thought of Floria as an unbearable brat. Cartel had to fall asleep because of her scent. Upon waking, he was in the hands of the Vernon family. It was strange from the beginning, as the chains of the seal binding him reacted to the fragrance of that flower. As the first cracks appeared in the chains, Cartel decided to break free and escape immediately. But that insolent flower jumps into his mouth on its own, without even imagining the consequences. With a soft and delicate touch, Cartel unbuttons the protagonist's dress, leaving her back exposed, and he smiles. Flower humans can only see one truth, thanks to the flower's blessing. But after using that power, flowers bloom on her back, between her shoulder blades, like a painting. However, on Floria's back, there is no trace of the blessing. Cartel doesn't understand how she knew his name, nor why the chains react only to that flower. At first, he was going to give in to the deception of that insolent flower, but magic continues to accumulate in the seal. If this continues, the chains will eventually break completely. Touching Floria's hair, Cartel says that letting go of prey that comes on its own is idiotic. At that moment, he hears footsteps approaching the cage, and looking up, he sees a familiar male silhouette. In the carriage, Floria thinks about how she could fall asleep so carelessly. It's dangerous despite the agreement. Upon waking, she saw Cartel sleeping for the first time, and verified that even the fiercest beast looks adorable when sleeping. Still, the heroine doesn't understand what is happening to him, as she infused him with so much power, and the monster isn't humanizing. Cheryl interrupts the girl's thoughts which Floria finds strange, since she rarely starts a conversation. The maid asks if the lady feels uncomfortable, but she replies sharply, forbidding her from speaking to her first. The protagonist sees Cheryl as a very kind girl who surely cares sincerely for her. However, she doesn't want to develop excessive attachment to her because if the butler notices something, she will be replaced again. And that will mean the girl's death, as has happened so far. The carriage stops with a screech at Duke Ed Bell's mansion, and Floria exits it accompanied by the maid. Now the protagonist must resolve the priority tasks and fulfill Rickle's order. Sienna's glass greenhouse is famous in high society for its exotic flowers and rare orchids under tall trees. Looking around, Floria makes sure that everything here is exactly as the rumors say. Luxurious and beautiful. The other guests are surprised by the appearance of Lady Vernon in the greenhouse, who greets those present. Sienna says she cannot express in words how happy Floria's visit makes her. While drinking tea, the protagonist thanks her for the invitation and admires her beautiful greenhouse. The young woman comments that she tried hard to create such a special place. Looking at her maid, Sienna asks if the girls like Lily. Floria is surprised that Lady Edbell has a catwoman who obeys her too. Cat people are known for their pride, but Lily is still like a doll. And then Floria realizes that the maid is wearing a mind control adornment, which cannot be used on high-ranking beings like Cartel. It destroys the bearer's mind and is even forbidden to use on slaves. According to Sienna, the Catwoman has a terrible temper, and all this is for her own safety. The young woman boasts about other creatures, besides Lily, and asks Floria if she knows much about them. The heroine nods. Since she sees such creatures quite often, the guests envy the lady of the estate. They are dying to see the rarity. Finally, Sienna gets to the point and tells Floria that she invited her to ask her for something personal. She promises to show something to the rest, but in return, they must keep the secret. The heroine thinks she seeks to spread rumors, and the ladies get up from the table. Sienna tells Floria that she has a special being, so rare that communication requires great effort. Approaching, they feel great humidity and the smell of salt, as if they were on the coast. Splashing sounds are heard. And suddenly, a merman appears in the greenhouse. At that moment, waves cut through the space, and a huge saltwater pool captures the heroine's gaze. A merman with aquamarine eyes, a blue smile, and colorful scales emerges from the water. Sienna says that the creature called Orca was obtained with difficulty in the East, as the Edbel family manages the imperial ties. Suddenly, the young woman hears the merman tell her that his real name is not Orca, but a Salido. Sienna smiles, as the merman usually barely leaves the water, but today he seems to be in a good mood. A merchant from Ruga delivered the merman to the Edbel family, and the Duke gifted him to his daughter. The Ruga Guild ship sank recently, and thanks to Duke Edbel they managed to survive. This led them to become the main guild that brings various products to the imperial court. The protagonist listens carefully to Sienna's story about the Duke's connection with the small guild. She suspected she would see something interesting today, but she never imagined it would be a merman. The merman village is blessed by the sea, and even armed ships have fallen into their whirlpools. Thanks to this, these creatures were the only ones who remained safe from human hands. Isolido looks at Floria and asks if she hears him, asking her not to pretend not to understand. The heroine remembers that mermaids can transmit their thoughts, but it seems only she hears them. According to Isolido, he doesn't like the name Orca because he already has a name from birth. All of Sienna's guests are amazed. They had never seen anything so beautiful. Lady Edbell looks at Floria with a look that seems to boast that even the Vernons don't have anything like it. The heroine admits it. It is the first time she has seen such a creature. Sienna is surprised that even a Vernon can be ignorant of something. To Floria's question about what is wrong with Lady Edbell, she replies that the merman refuses to eat fish. Not understanding why a merman would want fish, the heroine promises to examine him. And approaching the pond, she notices how thin and pale Isolido is. The merman's tail is injured, but according to him, it wasn't the humans. When he opened his eyes, he was already here. Floria is indignant because Sienna adopted a merman without finding out what he eats or how to cure him. Furious at the girl's lack of vision, she explains that those creatures do not feed on fish. The protagonist approaches Lady Dara's and admires her wonderful pearl earrings. Smiling, Floria asks to borrow the earrings for a moment, if she doesn't mind. Taking the earrings, the heroine approaches the merman, who licks the pearl as it is his food. According to Floria, he became thin because they tried to feed him fish. What a mistake. Sienna smiles because, as expected of a Vernon, the girl helped her solve the problem. Suddenly, a cat jumps onto the protagonist, and due to the fright, she loses her balance. Oh no. Floria understands why Ed Bell brought her to the pond, but something stops her from falling into the water. While she thinks about what that was, the other ladies decide that the merman saved her. Although in their eyes it seems that a Scylid saved Floria, the heroine knows that is not the case. Still, to annoy Sienna, she says, laughing, that this merman seems to like her more than the others. The heroine never used the flower's power on common people, but she thinks she can forgive herself this whim. Deciding that she had helped Sienna enough, Floria says goodbye and prepares to return to the mansion. She fulfilled Rickel's task, but the strange black flashes that saved her from falling don't leave her mind. Suddenly, she remembers that in the original story, Cartel controlled similar flashes. And that idea shocks her. Back at the mansion, Floria enters Rickel's office, who awaits her report. She tells him about the Ruga Merchant Guild and the merman, but she doesn't know how to get the one who cannot stay out of the water for long out of there. Moreover, the youngest son of the family, Baluz, is now somewhere on the border to intercept the creature traffickers. His role is to deliver rare monsters and creatures of another type to the mansion, even stealing them from other families. But just then, the heroine remembers that it is time for Baluz to return. Rickel entrusts Floria to collect the merman together when he returns, as he will not die without water. Even if they take a little longer. The boy goes to tell the heroine something else. But he regrets it and for the first time interrupts himself. Floria finds it strange and asks if her father ordered her to be sent with Baluz too because of the merman. But her brother does not answer. Despite how late it is, the heroine decides to go see Cartel and finds him asleep. Fearing that Rickel did something to him in his absence, she touches him, but the beast's eyes snap open. In an instant, Cartel is over the girl and tells her that she smells stale. Although she doesn't understand what he is talking about. Floria is more interested this time than the last. He said he couldn't transform into a human. Cartel caresses the girl's face and confesses that he was starting to get angry, as the transformation is not going as he wants. Looking at the heroine, he admires her beauty and Floria blushes. She turns and asks him to answer. But Cartel insists that it is not turning out as he wants. He grabs her hand and bites her fingers. Floria screams in pain from the attack. While licking her, Cartel warns her not to come to him impregnated with another scent. He dislikes it. Moving away from him, she asks him to get dressed and is surprised by his sharp sense of smell. As Cartel detects the smell of stagnant water, Floria tells him about her encounter with the mermaid. She is annoyed that he cannot control his transformation. This doesn't bode well. She doesn't understand if it's good or bad that the flow of magic in the seal is so unstable. Either the magic escapes through the cracks in the shackles, or the seal absorbs and destroys its magical energy. May it be the first. It will be easier to break the chains that way. She promises to look for a solution before her father returns. Cartel tears off another piece of cloth from his cloak, but Floria scolds him and is scared by her outburst towards the beast. But the fear vanishes, replaced by shame when he smiles, and says that to train the beast. You have to reward it. Just as Floria said, he waited quietly and even put on that clumsy thing. And uncomfortable. The protagonist doesn't understand what reward he is referring to. He is not a cat or a dog to be trained. Not knowing what else to do, she timidly extends her hand towards his head and stroking Cartel's head. She calls him smart. He asks if that is all. And Floria, not understanding why he is dissatisfied even when she praises him, says goodbye until tomorrow, and leaves. Watching her leave, Cartel thinks about how weak his reward was. And at this rate, the girl might end up being devoured. Soon, the chains will turn to dust, as all the magical energy that left the seal is accumulating inside his body. That seal still blocked the magical energy inside Cartel's body, but with Floria's magic, it is different. And it accumulates inside. And the more often he turns human, using her magic, the more actively the energy inside him revives. For now, Cartel is still weak, but he can already place her near someone, as he did with Floria today. Despite everything, the boy feels dissatisfaction, but it is not that horrible feeling of being paralyzed. That night, when the heroine slept in Cartel's arms, a silver-winged falcon came and ordered him to stay away from his sister. Cartel gestured for him to be quiet, as he might wake up his girl. Until then, Rico thought of him as a beast and let his guard down, but he didn't imagine what kind of beast he was. He believed he was just a miserable guinea pig for the Duke's experiments. Rickle himself helped acquire that monster at the Imperial Palace and handed over the unicorn to His Majesty. In exchange for that price, he obtained the key to the sealed room. Normally, Rickle has other obligations, so he couldn't see the monster in person. But he knew the beast would be sent to an underground cavern and didn't pay much attention to it. Rickle stayed alone in the capital, and when he was acclimating the unicorn to the new place, Pi delivered him a letter from Arden. The boy didn't understand what wedding there could be between his sister and the garbage discarded by the imperial family. He supposed that scoundrel had told Floria some nonsense to trick her. Upon hearing from the beast that everything had been the girl's initiative, Rickle planned to get rid of him. However, Cartel surrounded himself with powerful bursts of magical energy, preventing him from getting closer. Rickle knew that ability, and when he recognized it, a shiver of dread ran through him. As if protecting a cage, the black bursts moved like living beings, terrifying the enemy. That magical monster ability was a level above the power of the Imperials. The Emperor said that he had no magical energy, no consciousness, no basic elemental skills. And although he was born of his seed, he did not consider him a relative at all. That's why the family sold the beast for experiments. But in reality, everything turned out differently. Rickle decided to kill the monster before he broke free from his restraints. But Cartel warned him that he would only hinder Floria, as the flower forges its own path. Rickle remembered when he asked his sister if she really planned to merge with that beast. He didn't understand why she replied that she would if this monster managed to become human. Looking at his sleeping sister, Rickle swore not to hesitate and only think about how to kill that monster. He regretted not having been able to protect Floria and that she had to defend herself alone. To the boy's question about the deal, Cartel replied that everything has a price. A lot of time has passed since the tea ceremony with Sienna, and Rickle has barely spoken to Floria since then. Perhaps he is waiting for Beluse's return, and the heroine is intrigued about who will return first. Her brother or her father. Both worry her equally, because upon returning, the Duke will check Cartel's condition. And with Beluse, he must go for the merman. Cartel's magical energy is still unstable. The seal chains still absorb Floria's magic. But he still doesn't turn into a human. He does it when you least expect it. Why could that be? It would be great if he thought about dressing himself before the transformation, don't you think? Cartel's behavior seems too extravagant to the heroine and embarrasses her. Suddenly, Floria hears a familiar voice, soft as the wind, which has called her little lately. Arden seems like he hasn't seen his sister in a long time, and his face shows a smile. Powerless. Perhaps it's just her impression, because her brother is worried about her marriage. But she notices that he has lost weight. Arden goes to fulfill an assignment that the butler has entrusted him with. Often, the butler gave tasks to the Duke's sons instead of the father, and Arden looked for traitors. Maybe it's because he can hear the trees, which tell him everything they see if he asks. Thus, Arden finds out about the traitors who plan to steal creatures or reveal family secrets. They lock them in the dungeon of the experimental tower, where only tortures that will make them beg for mercy await them. It is a very cruel task for the kind Arden, but he does not resist, surely complying for Floria. Taking the girl's hand and stroking her face, the brother begs her not to do anything that would hurt her. He feels distressed, as he doesn't know what Floria has in mind, and he would carry out any order from the Duke for her. The protagonist knows he is lying, as even now his fingers tremble, since Arden fears taking a life more than anything. Floria takes his hands and tells him that he will always be her brother. No matter what they do, where they are, at least that will never change. In this place, filled with lies to the brim, only these words are true. And Arden believes her. That's why the girl asks her brother to trust her completely. The heroine is in the garden, wondering what mission Arden has gone on this time. Floria Vernon bursts into the garden, interrupting her thoughts. He rushed to find his sister upon returning. He orders the maid to remove everyone he brought with him. Get out of here right now. His eyes shine with fury when one of his prisoners calls him the shame of the beasts. Instantly, sharp claws gleam on his fingers, and his teeth clench with rage. But seeing Floria approach, Floria is immediately distracted and runs to hug his sister. Completely forgetting the beastmen behind him, he takes the young woman's hand and heads to the estate. Floria is eager to take a bath after the trip, but he doesn't want to be separated from his sister for even a second. The heroine tells her brother to bathe and promises to dry his hair afterward. Floria is worried about having let her guard down, but she never imagined Velis would return so soon. In the novel, it was said that this character had the appearance of a small child. And adorable. But his cruelty surpasses Floria's in the novel, and due to experiments since birth. His physical abilities are far superior to those of beastmen. That's why countless people relaxed upon seeing the small child, only to bid farewell to life forever afterward. Fortunately, Floria is always kind to Floria, but his perfect obedience also exhausts her. For example, the heroine once casually mentioned the beauty of a butterfly. And by the end of the day, her brother brought her hundreds of butterflies from the mountains. Once, a maid made a mistake in front of Floria during dinner, and Velis blew her head off instantly. The girl shuddered seeing his smiling face, splattered with blood, while her brother asked if he had done well. The heroine still feels a chill when remembering it, but Velis, who has returned from the bath, distracts her from her thoughts. Floria suggests greeting the family after drying her hair, but he only needs his sister. Velis did not love any of his brothers, and as soon as they met, he growled as if he had run into an enemy. And now, Floria must be tied to her brother. He asks to sleep together because he missed her very much. After putting Velis to bed, the heroine thinks about how much he resembles a little angel right now. Werewolves are born without gender, and as they mature, they divide into female individuals and male ones. Although Velis has no gender now, he was born looking like a doll. That's why he is listed as a girl in the family book. Floria tells her brother about a new mission, in which they will both participate this week. Floria doesn't understand why his father is sending his sister with him and plans to complain about it. According to the heroine, they will only go on such a mission once, and it is not as dangerous as it seems. Moreover, Floria trusts that her brother will protect her without hesitation if something goes wrong. Of course, Floria's negative thoughts vanish instantly, and he promises that it will be so. After calming her brother, the heroine lays him down again and tucks him in. Floria promises to marry her when he grows up, but Floria explains that relatives cannot marry. The little one smiles and repeats that even so, he will do it someday. How stubborn! Since he was 5 years old, Floria has insisted that he will marry her. And nothing has changed so far. The heroine is worried about his reaction upon learning about her impending wedding. And that's why she keeps it a secret. The next morning, Velis follows Floria everywhere again, not leaving her alone for a second. The young woman fears sneaking away, as he might cry and destroy something. Or even worse, kill someone. She asks him to wait a moment while she goes down to the dungeon. A forbidden place for him, because someone very nervous is there. Seeing her leave, the brother, looking at the dungeon entrance, wonders why she hides who is locked up there. To find out what is hidden in that cave, Baluz decides to ask Arden. But when his brother advises him to run errands, he furiously promises to crush him when he grows up. Arden, surprisingly, ignores his attacks and replies that he is free to do as he pleases. Barely escaping Baluz, Floria goes down to the dungeon, where Cartel is in human form. The girl praises him for dressing well, and he attributes it to his own training. Cartel always transformed naked and did not expect any other reaction from Floria. Approaching the cage, he asks the girl for a reward for his obedience. The heroine is struck by his confident request, as if it were something natural. Not understanding what he wants this time, Floria strokes Cartel's head again. But he takes the heroine's hands and tells her that he is not at all satisfied with that reward. According to him, it is not a reward, and fear begins to take hold of the girl. He approaches Floria, and when their lips are almost together, he says that she will receive her prize later. Indignant at his behavior, the heroine brusquely rejects Cartel. The young woman tries to think quickly about how to justify such an outburst. She asks him if he is hurt, but Cartel does not understand what she is talking about. According to Floria, if he had only been born with a human appearance, he would have had everything. Cartel was only born with the appearance of a beast, and that's why they didn't want him in the imperial palace. They were afraid of being discovered, so they locked him up and hid him. That's how the life of a man was completely snatched away from him. However, Cartel does not understand what the point of feeling offended is if it changes nothing. He only wants to slaughter the main person responsible. Because, like him, his mother was completely blameless. Floria promises that Cartel can do whatever he wants when he gets out of here, because in the novel, the imperial family also fell. Then a new world will open, and when the hero meets the protagonist, he will finalize everything. After this, Floria will be able to live in peace. Now she says goodbye and prepares to leave the dungeon. That same night, she receives a message from her father. Although the meeting ended, she stays in the demon tower. The heroine is relieved. The Duke will not meet with Cartel alone, and she can delay Vella's finding out about her wedding. The brother is ready for the mission and goes to look for Floria. With cloaks and hoods, both leave the mansion. Floria always obtained information, and for the first time she will guide someone. So she is a little nervous. As is customary among nobility, the Edbel mansion is guarded. The brother and sister decide to wait for the guard change. Baluz will go first and advises Floria to follow him. Not only is he strong, but he is also a mixed breed of black wolves. So he controls shadows and darkness. Therefore, for secret missions, Baluz is simply the perfect candidate. During the guard change, the door opens for an instant, and Floria and her brother slip in unseen. But upon entering the glass greenhouse, they see a strange dark silhouette in the middle of everything. The heroine calms her brother, because in front of them is the Catwoman she has already encountered before. Noticing the maid's dirty clothes, Floria understands that Sienna threw her out and decides to free her. The girl removes an ornament from the Catwoman's neck that she couldn't remove until she lost consciousness. Normally, it is difficult to restore the mind, but Catwoman can transform into another form. Floria envelops her with her magic, and the maid turns into a black cat. She rubs gratefully against the heroine's legs, who wishes her a happy life, and runs away. Baluz, jealous of his sister because of the Catwoman, pouts offendedly. But Floria strokes his head tenderly. And there they are, because the girl smells the already familiar scent of the sea and hears the splashing of water in the pond. Dimly lit by the moon. Emerging from the water, Isilid asks if Floria has come to see him. He swims closer to the girl, hiding no joy at her visit. The heroine notices that since that day, the merman has not been hungry. And he confirms it, even though she gave him the most delicious pearl. Baluz, who cannot hear Isilid's words, asks his sister what that little fish is talking about. Floria calls her brother naughty boy and orders him to install the crystals as soon as possible, to which he takes offense. Baluz calms down only after she promises to return home soon and sleep by his side. The merman's wounds have not yet healed, but they could do so in the sea. although Asilid doesn't know if he will be able to return there. He knows what the Vernon family does, because the brat who thinks she owns him prattled about it every day. That's why the merman asks the protagonist if he too will be a guinea pig. Floria doesn't understand why he, knowing her plans with Baloo's, remains so impassive. Questions bubble up on her tongue, but she fails to formulate them, and tears spring from her eyes. At that moment, her brother's voice rings out, indicating that everything is ready and they can leave. Merfolk cannot last long without water, so they needed a method to take Asilid away without killing him. For this purpose, Floria and Baloo's resort to magic crystals. Asilid emerges from the water, astonished by humans' ability for such acts. According to the heroine, thanks to these crystals, the waves will continue to surround him and the merman will not suffer while moving. A blinding light bursts out, and human legs replace Asilid's tail. Floria is dumbfounded, as the merman's figure looks like that of a mystical sea fairy. Taking his sister's hand, Baloo's urges her to hurry. Dawn will arrive soon, and using the shadows will be more difficult. Upon leaving through the door, he takes the reins, worried that the merman will harm Floria in the carriage. But she reassures her brother. She asks him to drive carefully, but Velas is determined to go fast to have time to play with his sister before sleeping. Asilid did not resist at all and docilely allowed himself to be captured, and now sits calmly in front of the heroine. However, once they return to the mansion, the young woman surely won't be able to protect him anymore. Unlike Cartel, who is a prince, Asilid will definitely be used for experiments. How horrible! This saddens the heroine, because the merman will surely blame her for everything that has happened. Suddenly, Asilid approaches Floria and asks her to hug him, because he won't live long anyway. The further the merman is from the sea, the shorter his life becomes, and moreover, he is injured. The artificial pond did not have the blessing of the sea he needed, and he could not live in a place that only seemed like the right environment. That's why he followed Floria. Furthermore, Asilid wanted to admire the young woman a little more and taking her hand, suddenly hugs her. He asks her to cover him, but Floria doesn't understand what such a request refers to. It makes no sense to hide it. A merman will not survive long on dry land. Asilid asks the young woman not to worry or be sad, because everything will turn out well for both of them. And he proposes a pact. The protagonist is surprised by the merman's words, as if he knew about her contract with Cartel. Firmly squeezing Floria's hand, Asilid questions her again about the cursed contract. The young woman feels that the merman has bewitched her, and without thinking twice, she accepts the proposal. Kneeling before Floria, the merman names her his contractor and flower of reason. Then he moves closer and closer to the young woman's lips, who blushes from embarrassment. Asilid brushes his lips against Floria's pearl earring, and a bright light envelops them. Since pearls are the tears of the sea god, and cyanids are his children, who see past and future, he predicts that everything will go in the direction the heroine sets. Rising into the air, Asilid promises Floria that they will see each other a little later. In an instant, the cyanid disappears into the heroine's earring pearl. Standing in the middle of the office, Ricca looks sternly at Floria. Interposing himself between them and protecting the girl, Baloo's growls furiously at his brother. The heroine apologizes to Ricca, admitting her mistake. When they arrived at the ducal mansion and Baluz opened the carriage door, only Floria was inside. But now she cannot tell the truth to her siblings, as the girl still doesn't fully believe that a cyanid is hiding in her earring. Despite Baluz's desire to take all the blame, Floria asks that only her name be written in the report to their father. Since she lost a rare creature, there must be a punishment. But it's better than sending Silid to hell. Rickel drops the bomb. Their father completely ignores the water spirit. According to him, yesterday he and Baluz were on an inspection that lasted until today. Trying to protect his sister, he claims that the butler will think the same. As Floria leaves the office, Baluz catches up with her and begs her to explain everything. Stroking her brother's head, she confesses that she doesn't understand it either, as the spirit disappeared before her eyes. The spirit hidden in the earring and Rickel, sending her without their father's permission. They confuse her, so she suggests Baloo's rest. The 17th emperor, Lee Santos of Leopold, sits on the throne facing his kneeling subjects. The emperor asks about the well-being of the one he calls that thing. According to Count Iside, after Rickwill Burnon's departure, he has been healthy and there should be no problems until the appointed day. They are talking about the unicorn, obtained in a deal with the Burnon family, which they keep in the most remote area of the palace. The emperor orders extreme precautions until the divine day. He is satisfied to obtain something valuable by only selling the shame of the imperial palace. And he is glad he didn't kill it. The son of the first empress turned out to be a monster. What a disgrace for the ruling family. Lesha extended that small black beast to her husband, calling him her son. Even risking her life for him, the empress insisted until the end that he was alive. And that she had given birth to him. She believed she had given birth to a son, and in the end, the emperor took him away from Lesha, locking him in the most secret corner of the palace. Then, getting rid of the empress was easy thanks to falsified documents. After locking Lesha in the tower, a second empress appeared who gave her husband a healthy son. The boy, only 1 year younger than that monster, grew up without problems and became the empire's crown prince. If we cover up that shame from the past, everything will go smoothly. The emperor questions Duke Edbul if he is connected to the commercial guild that sends items to the palace. Judging by how the duke obtained the merman, the Ruga Guild is involved, and it seems they introduced drugs into the country. Despite Edvul's apologies, His Majesty waves his hand and throws him face down on the floor. Emperor Santos can control the force of gravity to such an extent that he is capable of crushing all human organs. After releasing Edvul, Leopold gives him one last chance and orders him to solve everything as soon as possible. The Duke, trembling from head to toe, thanks the Emperor for his great magnanimity. His Majesty sighs heavily, as he finds himself surrounded by problems everywhere. The Leopold family is praised for their power over nature, even without magic crystals. They say their blood is divine. But the truth is different. The source of their power is the strength of monsters transmitted from generation to generation. A few days after the incident with the merman's disappearance, a great commotion arises outside. Sienna caused a scandal shouting that her merman had disappeared, but it all ended in a small uproar. Because the downfall of the Ruga Commercial Guild, which had the support of Duke Edbul, was more widely publicized. Authority intoxicated them, they coveted taxes, and after being accused of a monstrous crime, they were hanged on the main door. The emperor feels his power weakening, as the older generations could cause floods or set the capital on fire. He needs to strengthen his absolute authority by passing off a unicorn as a divine gift. Although that monster will surely die during experiments on the Burnon family. Sitting in the garden, Floria reflects on why her father is still in the demon tower. Enriquil, who tried to kill Cartel, has said nothing since then. It was strange how he sent the young woman after the merman, without their father's order. And Asilid, meanwhile, hid in the earring. Since that day, the pearl earring remained on the heroine's ear, and she didn't take it off at all. Belias runs into the garden and Floria scolds him, because when her brother is upset. He is forbidden from entering here, because he can destroy all the flowers. However, when she turns around, the young woman sees her brother in front of her crying and clutching a paper in his hands. Floria's marriage permission was in the sealed envelope from the imperial palace. And that broke Baloo's. He hopes it's a lie, that the letter arrived at their estate by mistake. A terrible misunderstanding. The protagonist believed she could hide it from her brother a little longer. But fate is cruel. Kneeling before him, she admits that the letter was addressed to her. The truth finally comes to light. Baloo's doesn't even want to hear about his sister getting married someday and leaving home. Unthinkable. But Floria explains that, with a marriage document, she can stay here. An unexpected solution. Baloo's, who is planning to murder his husband, doesn't understand what she means by her husband being across the sea. According to Floria, it is a marriage only on paper, thanks to which she can stay and not go to another family. A master plan. Upon hearing that his sister wants to stay with him, Baloo's radiates happiness. His heart fills with joy. The young woman smiles, although she feels guilty for hiding everything related to Cartel. A dangerous secret. The heroine confesses to Baloo's that she doesn't want to be separated from him, and the little wolf replies the same. And even though Floria's husband's position was taken from him, Baloo's is happy that his sister is staying with him. Nevertheless, the heroine is determined to leave this mansion with those who love her. And those whom she loves. This envelope and the documents from each family are enough for the marriage to become official. And tomorrow, the rumors will flood the capital. The heroine decides to go down to the dungeon to see Cartel, as after the incident with Asilid, she felt hesitant to come see him. However, the girl intends to tell him what is happening outside. Upon going down, she sees him in his human form, sitting calmly on the bed. But he looks somewhat strange, as if offended because she hasn't visited in days. In response to Floria's greeting, Cartel asks her to come closer. The heroine enters the cage, but today she feels particularly uncomfortable in front of him. She shows Cartel the marriage permit directly from the imperial palace. Suddenly, he smiles, takes her and hugs her tightly. Now they are truly husband and wife. Cartel points to Floria's earring and asks what it is. Panic invades her. She convinces herself that he cannot know about Asilide. Not even Baloo's knows. But Cartel throws her onto the bed and gets on top of her. It seems the boy from the sea played a good trick on her. He says he must know everything that happens to his mate. Now the doubt dissipates. He knows everything. She doesn't understand how Cartel found out that the earring is impossible to remove. No matter how much she tries, he says the pearl can be cut off with the ear. Floria was so kind to another while he waited for her alone. Cartel is furious. He was just waiting for her to arrive to make her suffer. He wonders how beautiful Floria will look if she cries because of him. The feeling is that he is going to devour her whole, but he tries to maintain composure. Although in the novel Cartel clung to the protagonist, he never showed her his cruelty. Gathering courage, Floria firmly orders him to step away and get off the bed. Surprised at first, he obeys and gets up. The girl approaches Cartel, strokes his face, and apologizes for making him wait. Since he waited so patiently, she is willing to reward him and hugs him tightly. However, when the heroine touches his bindings, Cartel suddenly licks her neck and bites her. The girl flinches and pulls away, begging him to stop, since he cannot touch her yet. Because they only have marriage permission, not the official registration, although it will arrive soon. The emperor will surely gladly accept Floria's wedding, thinking of Cartel as a young man living far away. Thus, he will believe that this wedding will not strengthen the adherents of the demonic doctrine. And they must wait a little longer. Suddenly, Baloo storms down to the dungeon with a firm step, calling his sister a liar. Thanks to her brother's stealth ability, the heroine did not notice when he entered the cave. Fiercely looking at the girl Cartel is protecting, Baloo declares that, for the first time, he is disgusted by her. Unfurling his sharp claws, he runs and jumps towards the cage, shattering the bars. Baloo is, in a way, happy that Floria's future husband is not in the sea. So he can kill him. Cartel remains motionless, throwing sarcastic taunts at the little wolf. Believing he cannot move because of the chains, the heroine rushes forward and begs her brother to stop. However, in an instant, Cartel easily lifts Baloo up, holding him above his head. The little wolf begins to cough blood, and Floria cannot believe she is losing in strength. Fearing for her brother's life, she begs Cartel to release him, and he throws him aside. The girl runs to Baloo's, but is astonished to discover that the healing scent has no effect on him. Cartel tells Floria to calm down. He prevented the cave from collapsing on everyone. Baloo's keeps coughing, and our heroine fears his condition is worsening. But Cartel insists. Her brother is not dying, he is just entering adulthood. Sometimes, beast men, after a great shock, transition to this stage suddenly. Floria recalls that, indeed, the gender of werewolves is defined in adulthood. Their bodies reform, new organs take shape. It's like a second birth. Cartel advises Floria to help Bellius sleep, because this will last a while. The attacks last a month. Wolves lock up their pups without being able to help them. They must overcome it alone, without sleep or food. Only then will they obtain an adult body. The heroine decides to calm Velas. She will use a soporific scent to help him sleep. According to Cartel, the little wolf's bones began to mutate even before his attack. It happened right before maturation, and Velas didn't feel it due to his distraction. Cartel suggests locking him in a safe place, a dungeon, as his temperament might lead him to react violently due to the pain. And kill people. Floria picks him up in her arms and takes him out of the dungeon, while Cartel advises her not to avoid it. She doesn't answer, but she feels that he knows absolutely everything about her. After that day, Beluz was confined to the basement of an empty tower. The only thing the heroine could do was stroke the unfortunate child's head. And so several days passed. The Duke remained in the tower, while rumors about Floria's marriage spread through the capital. Cartel remaining sane after living his whole life alone and locked up seemed like a miracle. In his entire life, Floria was the only person he could truly communicate with. Only now does she understand why he clung to her so much, like a chick seeing its mother upon opening its eyes for the first time. But young chicks, sooner or later, separate and fly far from their mother's arms. Now, the girl is sure that the same will happen with Cartel, and she must fulfill her duties instead of avoiding it. The protagonist thinks about all this just as Arden and the butler approach her. If she had to choose one person Floria hates meeting in this mansion, it would be the butler Clodion. It would be better to run into Rackus cleaning the sewers. At least he is foolish. But Clodion always watches them and is the father's right-hand man, delivering messages in his stead. Arden asks if she was planning to go to the garden and advises her to hurry up and take care of the flowers. Leaving them to continue their conversation, the girl walks past them with her head bowed. However, Clodion suddenly stops and asks Floria how the medical examination she had with Beluz went. As a child, the protagonist befriended a young maid who helped her cope with loneliness and the difficulty of adapting to the place. Clodion, who was also a butler back then, took that maid away, saying his mistress should not associate with people of a lower rank. After that, Floria never saw the girl again, and she didn't get as close to the second maid. Worried about her life. But one day, when the protagonist shared sweets with her without thinking, Clodion also took her away. Without erasing the smile from his face, he was indignant at how the maid dared to desire her mistress's food. When Clodion took the girl away, Floria followed him on instinct and then saw everything. That day, the protagonist discovered why the servants on their estate changed so often. Clodion enjoyed torturing people and sought out flaws in those who worked in the house purely for pleasure. From then on, Floria avoided getting close to the servants in the ducal mansion. Looking at the butler, she replies that, in her opinion, her brother Rickel has already informed him of everything. Clodion apologizes as he received the report from the young master. But sometimes, he says, something unusual can happen. The butler is already leaving, but suddenly stops and congratulates the young woman on her marriage. In the novel, the end of the Vernons is writ. Then the plot continues with the protagonists. And Floria did not exist. Cartel must meet his soulmate, the heroine. Submit to her and achieve eternal happiness. Lady Diras joyfully welcomes Floria Vernon to her mansion and thanks her for her visit. In response, the protagonist thanks her for the invitation and congratulates her on her birthday. Diras congratulates Floria on her wedding, and she blushes. It is the first time she has been congratulated, the young woman whom the heroine believes to be kind. But clumsy. She is happy for the honor of being the first. Now in the capital, everyone knows about Floria's marriage, but it is only on paper. And the husband is far away, across the sea. It cannot be said that such a marriage suits the daughter of Duke Vernon, who has everything. So the protagonist understands why everyone whispers as soon as they see her. The number of parties, balls, and celebrations she attends is already uncountable, without understanding their purpose. Floria has a very tight schedule until next week, but she didn't want to spend so much time away from the mansion. Right after obtaining the marriage permit, when Belusa was confined, Rickel gave her a stack of invitations. He tasked Floria with attending all the social events, as it was her duty too. She asked her brother if she should find out anything there, and why so many invitations suddenly. Rickel replied that she had to pay for the loss of the most valuable thing. Thus, Floria was expelled from the mansion, without even being given a chance to defend herself. Now the rumors about her will intensify, as an engaged young woman is hanging around the dances. Rickel didn't even ask her to investigate anything, and everything suggested that he was purposefully kicking his sister out of the house. Suddenly, Regan, the son of Count Oblon, approaches Floria, telling her they met at the Imperial Palace Ball. The protagonist doesn't remember him at all, but she doesn't show it and smiles, greeting him in response. But this decision was a mistake. Immediately after, all the boys present started approaching her. From behind, Sienna approaches the girl and comments sarcastically that Lady Floria's fame is unshakable. Edbul has dragged behind her a whole line of ladies, from the families of adherents to divine teaching. It was rumored that, upon losing a Scylid, she cried and had a hysterical fit, and her face indeed looks haggard. The girl is surprised by Floria's presence, but she affirms that she could not miss Lady de Iris's birthday. Sienna smiles and says that Vernon and she herself are quite worthy of congratulations too. Following her words, the girls surrounding her pounce on Floria, congratulating her on her marriage. One of the ladies suggests sending her Louville fruits as a gift, which are taken during uterine problems. The protagonist thanks them for their concern, but affirms that she is absolutely healthy. But the girls are ready to tear Floria apart, and so they relentlessly keep pressuring her. It had been a long time since this happened to the protagonist, and her patience is running out fast. However, Floria only thanks them for their support, leaving the girls completely stunned. Obviously, they expected Vernon to cause a scene, shouting about how they had insulted her. But Floria declares that she is a Scarlet Rose and a young adept of the demonic doctrine, a renowned well of wisdom. And that means none of them dare to worry about her. And besides, her wedding is by her own will. One of the ladies in the crowd thinks it's an excellent idea to marry a foreign prince to follow the path of scholarship as a woman. All the others join the idea, and although they clearly misunderstood something, it works perfectly for Floria. Thanking the girls once more for their concern and congratulations, the heroine says goodbye, expressing her desire to rest. Passing by Lady Sienna, she whispers to her to take good care of her little beak. Otherwise, according to her, from the beak to the wing feathers, everything could end up ripped off. Stopping in front of a group of young men, Floria finishes by saying she is not free enough for debauchery. A young man, his face hidden behind a mask, observes everything happening from a distance. Thinking about how amazing Floria is, he leaves the mansion with an idea swirling in his head. Removing his wig, he declares that the young adept of the demonic doctrine is more unusual than he thought. Accompanied by two knights, the masked boy leaves the count's property. In secret, getting out of the carriage, Floria reflects that from now on she shouldn't wear such high-heeled shoes. Although she left early, she returned at dusk, and the house is silent, without Belusa's joyful shouts. The heroine worries if he is okay, because growing up is being more painful than she imagined. Determined to see Cartel before Rickel, Floria heads to the cave and sees someone coming out of it. Looking closely, the girl recognizes Rickel, but she doesn't understand what he was doing there, since only she goes to the cave. Her brother didn't like Cartel from the start and lunged at him, shouting that he would finish him off. Rickel senses a presence behind the trees and orders them to come out, threatening reprisals. Seeing his sister in front of him, he freezes. He didn't expect to see her at this time, explaining that he returned earlier than expected. The protagonist asks her brother what he is doing there. Rickel is furious about Floria's early return. He told her to stay at the party until the end. Noticing that her brother is trying to change the subject, the protagonist reminds him that her husband is in the dungeon. So she has the right to know. For the first time since they grew up, Rickel got so close to Floria. Maybe the protagonist is too harsh because of exhaustion, but she repeats that her husband is important to her. And she wants to know what is happening. She confesses that she wanted to ask Rickel many things, but held back because she is his younger sister. Floria believes he already knows what rumors are circulating about her in high society. Her brother stays silent, and that is interpreted as a sign of approval, as he knows everything. According to the protagonist, something interesting happened today. Lady Sienna congratulated her on her wedding in front of all the nobility. Floria asks if her brother sends her off the estate on purpose because he wants her to be treated like that. With fists clenched and surrounded by the force of his magic, Rickel is indignant that that brat dares to act like that. Calming down, he places his hands on Floria's shoulders and, with hope in his eyes, proposes canceling the wedding. Rickel is sure it is not too late to change everything, but his sister replies that it is impossible. She didn't say it so her brother would support her, nor is she against him using her. But she wants to be useful for something more important. Furthermore, her father gave consent for the marriage. So Rickel shouldn't even think about preventing it. Leaving Rickel standing with slumped shoulders from impotence, Floria heads to the dungeon entrance. Just as she enters the cave, the brother is about to tell her something crucial. But when she turns around, the entrance closes. Floria doesn't manage to hear Rickel. She doesn't understand what happened, but now is not the time for such distractions. Forgetting the bars broken by Baloo's, she runs straight into Cartel's arms. How fun! She is surprised that Rickel didn't do anything to him. Not even an insignificant wound. If he is all right, all of Floria's worries simply vanish. Taking advantage of her being in his arms, Cartel hugs her even tighter. She asks if he met with Rickel, and demands the truth if he is deceiving her. According to Cartel, he is not deceiving her. There are simply things Floria does not suspect. Although a warning, according to him, could be of great use to her. So Cartel sends word to Rickel that he will regret it if he breaks the agreement. In her room, the heroine wonders what agreement there could be between those two. It is an impossible alliance. Cartel and Rickel, who hated each other to death, suddenly become friends and sign a contract. But if something is really happening between them, Floria must find out at all costs. However, Rickel constantly avoids the girl, and she doesn't manage to speak with him. Cartel explains nothing either, and the heroine decides to go to the garden to look at the flowers. When Floria goes out to the garden, she runs into Arden. Unexpectedly, it is rare to see the brother in the mansion. And furthermore, he is thinner, surely by the butler's order. The ducal family Vernon controlled the slave market of magical beings. But now there is a traitor who rescues them. That's why, with Arden's ability to hear the trees, they surely tasked him with finding the traitor. When asked what he was doing in the garden, the brother replies that he was just strolling there. Since they hadn't seen the flowers together in a long time, Floria suggests a walk and Arden accepts. Today, the protagonist came here to take care of her yellow flowers. Arden enjoys spending time with his little sister after so long. Hearing this, the girl feels somewhat uncomfortable. Because thinking about it, Arden also opposed the wedding. After all, he first attacked his father saying he was a wild beast. And after Rickel's return, he even avoided her for a while. That's why the protagonist decides to ask Arden why her older brother is avoiding her. According to him, he was away from the estate for a while, so he doesn't know what's wrong with Rickel. However, by Arden's face, Floria understands that he definitely knows something. Despite everything, she pretends not to notice and just sighs deeply. All emotions are instantly reflected on Arden's face. So he is terrible at lying. Definitely, Rickel, Cartel, and Arden are involved in something, a secret they keep between the three of them. She decides to ask what Pai is up to, who usually doesn't leave her older brother's side. But Arden says nothing, and Floria confesses that it hurts her a little. He never hid anything from her. Just as her brother is about to tell her something, a servant interrupts them with an urgent message for the mistress. He apologizes, but the matter cannot wait. A servant of Archduke Belhard is waiting for her. The Archduke is the Emperor's younger half-brother, and rules fertile lands with his title. The protagonist doesn't understand what her servant is doing on his property. Bellheart has nothing to do with her. And although she ignores the reason, she cannot keep the messenger waiting any longer. Without giving explanations to Arden, Floria runs out of the garden towards the mansion. Reuben Alt, Bellheart's personal servant, introduces himself to the heroine and apologizes for the unexpected visit. The young woman invites the envoy to sit down, and he informs her that he came by order of the Archduke. Floria wants to know what prompted Bellheart to send for her. It turns out that the Archduke is hosting an evening event next week and insists that Lady Vernon be present. The girl is surprised by the invitation, since, as she knows, Bellheart detests noisy events. According to Reuben, he also received orders to obtain an affirmative answer from Floria regarding her attendance. Since the Archduke is linked to the Imperial Palace, ignoring the invitation is not an option. The heroine promises to attend the event, and Alt thanks her for the reception. Floria knows nothing about Bellheart and therefore has no idea what he is plotting. Her brothers are also hiding something, and finding it out won't be easy, so first she must get rid of the pendant. To do that, she needs to find out what her father is doing in the magic tower. This way, the young woman will be able to understand when Duke Vernon will return to the mansion. After Floria told Cartel about Bellheart's event, he asks Daly how much time is left. Noticing the beast's thoughtful gaze, the heroine asks if he is thinking of something bad. Cartel says he is thinking of something cheeky and offers Flory to lean on him. The young woman begins to stroke the panther's soft fur, which feels so pleasant. Cartel lies down, the heroine falls on him, and strangely feels calmer this way. This fact does not escape the beast's attention, who notices she likes his form more. According to Flory, as a panther, he is softer and calmer. Suddenly, Cartel transforms into a human, and the heroine screams in fright. Putting on his shirt, he reminds the girl that this is not by her choice. Cartel hugs Floria, and she blushes, as lately he touches her more and more. And suddenly says he is eagerly looking forward to the event at Bellheart, because that day, he will do something terrible. Time flew by, and for 5 days, Floria kept running into Rickle near the cave. Amazingly, they never crossed paths inside during that whole time. Surely Cartel warned Rickle in advance when Floria was going to visit him. Arden, who previously always greeted the protagonist cheerfully upon seeing her, now avoids her at all costs. Cheryl enters Floria's room because it is time for them to start getting ready. The protagonist chooses a red dress, matching shoes, and only head ornaments. At this crossroads, Floria needs to escape the mansion, but she cannot refuse the Archduke's invitation. Bellheart keeps many secrets. It is difficult to see him at receptions, and the only thing known is that he survived the bloody night. The emperor ascended the throne by massacring many people in one day, including princes with the right to the throne. And he gave the princesses as wives to families of divine cult adherents. That night was called Bloody, and the only survivor was the Archduke, who at that time was the second prince. No one knows why the emperor left him alive, only different conjectures circulated. And now the protagonist doesn't understand why someone like that invited her, even sending his personal servant. Being from the imperial family, there can be no connection between him and an adept of the demonic doctrine. If Bellheart offers her a deal, Floria will be in a difficult situation, because if she does something wrong, she will not escape the emperor. Upon arriving at the mansion, the young woman gets out of the carriage and looks around in surprise. Strangely, there are no carriages around, but she perfectly remembers that she was invited to a summer party where there should be many nobles. She is welcomed by the butler of the Bellheart family, Ricardo Alt, who considers it an honor to look after the rose of the Vernon family. He dispels Floria's doubts when she thinks she got the time and place wrong. Only now does the protagonist understand that the Archduke never planned any party. Following the butler, she thinks about what Bellheart is plotting by inviting only her today. But it's too late to turn back, and Floria enters the mansion, even if it's a trap. Ricardo opens the drawing room door and invites the young woman in, as they are already waiting for her. Upon entering, the heroine is greeted by a young man who expresses joy at her visit. Looking up, Floria sees the crown prince standing in front of her. It is Raven Leopold, legitimate heir to the empire, with black hair and red eyes like the emperor's. The protagonist greets him and bows her head, and Raven invites her to sit down, as he is also tired from the journey. Floria doesn't understand what he is doing there, nor why the Archduke who invited her isn't even present. The girl apologizes for her rudeness. She never imagined running into His Highness here. Raven is the heir to the throne, born of the second empress. In other words, he is Cartel's blood brother. Both were born of the same seed, but one was abandoned and the other got everything. Raven smiles and asks Floria not to be so formal. Relax, the prince from the original romance was not important. She paid him no mind. She says she is moved by his kindness. But he insists that it's unnecessary. Raven moves too close to Floria, which makes her very nervous. Seen up close, he looks a bit like Cartel. The prince is known for his cheerfulness and for being quite a womanizer. They say he changes girlfriends 3 times a day: morning, afternoon, and night. He likes maids, noble ladies, and even married women. But Floria doesn't want to be on that list. When Raven sits down again, the protagonist asks if the Archduke is in the mansion. According to the prince, his uncle left for vacation with his wife because their love is immense. He approaches Floria and begs her not to show so much displeasure, because it hurts his soul. Raven invited her, and since he thought it was difficult for her to leave the estate, he asked Bellhart for help. The protagonist feels that all of this is giving her a terrible headache. She says that if he had sent her the letter, she would have prepared to avoid causing him trouble. Floria doesn't understand why he chose her, since the imperial family always avoided demonologists. Stroking her hair, Raven says that the visit to the palace reached the emperor's ears. Who hates the Vernons? When the prince touches her hair with his lips, she intuits his seductive plan. And another would have already surrendered. But Floria coldly rejects his hand, stating that her skills are insufficient for a demonic scholar. According to the heroine, Raven's praise for her gifts has been so much that she doesn't know where to hide. The prince acknowledges the talent of the young demonic expert, although now he intends to talk about marriage. Floria is indignant to learn that he knew and still orchestrated this trick. Raven confesses to having attended the count's banquet just to observe her. The entire capital, even the imperial palace, talks about nothing but Floria. And curiosity consumed him. The prince enjoyed watching those who remained at the banquet after the girl left, who undoubtedly knows how to be bold. Directly, Raven declares his interest in the heroine to her. He confesses that he is interested in her both as a woman and as an adept of the demonic doctrine. Floria tells the prince that the demonic doctrine is not comparable to the divine doctrine of the imperial family. It is known that the palace detests the demonic doctrine, viewing it as a threat. And the girl is astonished that Raven speaks so openly. According to the prince, it is the most practical doctrine, with enormous development potential. And although his father is hostile to adherents of the demonic doctrine, he himself thinks differently. Raven is friendly towards her because he never discards something that can be useful. But now, according to him, none of that matters, as, kneeling, he asks Floria for permission to possess her. He is not at all concerned about the girl's impending marriage, and he will not stop her on her path as a scholar. In Raven's opinion, compared to the multitude of young men and scholars, he is the most worthy choice. Aristocrats do not like girls studying science, and society believes that ladies should dance. And no etiquette. The crown prince's words sound definitely tempting for the girl who has decided to dedicate herself to science. Touching Floria's face, Raven promises that if she bears his child, their relationship will be even more special. Since the prince says he doesn't waste what is useful, it means he ruthlessly gets rid of what is useless. According to Floria, this proposal is a great honor for her. However, she firmly rejects it. Raven, with a mocking smile, declares that he expected such an answer. How predictable. But she rejects him so firmly that it even hurts him. Well, he didn't see this coming. Sitting across from her, he asks what would happen if he prevented her marriage, using his own methods. In that case, it wouldn't be easy for Floria, and she would have to marry someone from the adherents of the divine cult. To the question of whether he is threatening her, the prince declares that he is only giving advice, so the girl chooses the best path. The protagonist never imagined such an obstacle would arise in her path. What a low blow. But just as she is about to tell Raven how complicated this is, Cartel suddenly enters the room. While she tries to understand how he got there, the boy apologizes to the prince and introduces himself as Prince Baden. According to him, they are exchanging the marriage documents with Floria, but he couldn't hold back anymore. And he came in person. Baden is a small state across the ocean, the one the Duke put down as the heroine's fake husband's nationality. Raven notices that Cartel speaks the language of his empire perfectly. Without losing composure, he replies that he has been studying it since childhood and that he doesn't know how to react to the prince's compliment. Cartel says he arrived at the Vernon mansion, and a servant informed him that Floria was at an event hosted by the Archduke. And although in Badhan it is polite to visit the highest-ranking person first, here it seems they took it as rudeness. Cartel apologizes for the visit. It's just that he tried very hard to learn about the empire, where his future wife will live. Raven asks the servant for the documents, and upon reviewing them, he is surprised that the marriage document from Badhan arrived so soon. The butler asked Cartel to wait in the reception hall, and he doesn't understand how he got here. While the prince chases the servant out, the heroine wonders what the hell is going on here. Noticing her gaze, Cartel approaches, takes her hands, and tells her how much he missed his future wife. According to him, he saw Floria for the first time as a child when he traveled with his father to unexplored foreign lands. Hearing this, the heroine is astonished by such a lie, and he continues to say that he fell in love at first sight as a kid. Even growing up, he couldn't forget Floria, and he dared to send a letter to the Vernon family. According to Cartel, when he received a response, his soul rejoiced as if the whole world were in his hands. And so he spent his days, sending letters to his beloved across the sea, eagerly awaiting a reply every day. Hugging her, Cartel tells her that he was incredibly happy when she accepted his proposal. As if suddenly waking up, he turns to Raven and regrets that the event, apparently, has ended. Upon hearing from the prince that it ended before Cartel arrived, he feels sorry, as he wanted to attend such an evening. Although the heroine is confused by Cartel's unexpected arrival, this is her meeting with her half-brother. She doesn't understand how he can remain so calm about this. Suddenly, Cartel tells the prince that surely he will have another opportunity to attend such an evening, since he will be staying in the Empire after the wedding. He bids farewell to Raven, who looks surprised at the couple leaving the estate. Upon exiting, the heroine sees a black carriage and servants dressed in Oriental style. And she understands why they let Cartel in. Because if he had shown up alone, they wouldn't have even listened to him. Cartel offers Floria to get into his carriage, since his own was prepared in a hurry. And it might seem uncomfortable for the young woman. The people nearby, according to him, are members of his family, and they themselves will follow the carriage. Now it seems to the heroine that Cartel's twin brother really came from Badhen, or that he has reincarnated again into another novel. On the way home, she thinks about how Cartel could have gotten out if the wedding plan was made up because he cannot do it. After a brief silence, he offers the protagonist a drink and asks her to drink it. Upon drinking, the girl notices that Cartel has no chain marks on his neck and doesn't understand how they could have broken so quickly. Staring fixedly into his eyes, Floria asks him why he didn't tell her anything. According to Cartel, the seal is not completely broken, and to prove it, he asks the girl to give him her hand. The protagonist extends her hand and touches his neck with her fingers. Upon touching it, Floria feels a coldness, as if touching steel. Cartel explains to her that the chains are actually connected to the mansion's dungeon. And although the girl doesn't see them, she definitely feels how the chains extend beyond the carriage window. When Floria asks how this happened, Cartel hugs her and replies that it is not real. If he could truly remove the chains, he would gouge Raven's eyes out. He would have torn that brat who tried to touch Floria to pieces. The girl is surprised how, in that case, both Cartel's voice and warmth feel so real. At that moment, a mist envelops the boy, and she understands that the time has come. Promising to tell Floria everything when he returns to the mansion, Cartel disappears. Upon returning home, the girl runs out of the carriage, ignoring the servants who greet her, and runs towards the dungeon.